Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday, brought to you by Immense Network Cloud IT Management. Plenty to do. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Got Jordan Kitchens and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. LSU basketball staff has made a couple of additions, very, very familiar names to those in the Southeastern Conference and here in Baton Rouge. We'll discuss a little bit of that. The basketball transfer portal is open as well. Glen West will be here at 1:30. We'll talk some football, basketball, and baseball with Glen. I'll react to last night's national championship game. LSU and Bethune-Cookman tonight from the box at 6:30. I saw Bethune-Cookman on the schedule. I went, okay, that's an easy win. I did some research today. Bethune-Cookman can play a little bit, so we'll see. I'll talk about it at 2 o'clock. Sharif Ishak talking Saints at 2:30, so as you understand, we got a lot to get to. LSU was on the practice field this morning. That is our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive. Presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
So, Tigers on the practice field today. Crisp morning out there on the Ponderosa. Couple housekeeping things. They were in helmets and shoulder pads, shorts for the rest of the guys as well. Just some light contact, but a lot of walk through what we're able to see through the first 20 minutes. Sam Levitt is not at practice and may not be at practice the rest of the way. That makes me look a little bit foolish from last week when I suggested, hey, I'm watching him. He's like jogging around a little bit like he's going to be fine for opening day. And he probably still is, but he did have to have those screws removed from his surgically repaired foot. That happened over the weekend. Lane Kiffin said today, does not expect him back in spring football. So while I made a point for the first 3 weeks of spring ball to be like, well, he's not like sitting out. He's actually practicing. Well, that was short-lived. He got about halfway through, and now he will have to sit while that foot continues to heal. So this is not a setback. This is perfectly on schedule. We just didn't know the schedule and now understand that Sam Levitt is probably done for the spring weeks. I did not see it practice today. Doesn't mean he wasn't there, but I did not see him at practice today. He has not worked out all of spring, so that's not exactly new information. Now, as far as the things that we did see on the practice field today, I took notice of something in particular. It's something that I have discussed on multiple shows and have written multiple times on LouisianaSports.net. But it's something that I took more attention to today. Just full disclosure, we're seeing a lot of the exact same stuff day over day. We go out there, they do a really light 11 on 11 for 6 plays. They break individual drills. The running backs run through the sleds. The cornerbacks do backpedaling drills. The offensive linemen line up way far away and do one thing. The defensive linemen hit the sleds. The linebackers go with Chris Kiffin, and they do backpedaling drills. Like, we see kind of the same thing day after day after day. So I was like, well, what can I watch that's a little bit different? And Blake Baker caught my eye. So I watched Blake Baker for almost 20 minutes today. We were watching practice for 25. And what I saw today was very, very noticeably different than what Blake Baker did at practice during the Brian Kelly era. During the Brian Kelly era, Blake Baker worked with the linebackers. He worked with the linebackers on their coverage stuff. He worked with the linebackers on shedding blocks. He worked with the linebackers on getting downhill. He was with the linebackers. You had the defensive line coach and the edge rushers coaches with those guys. Corey Raymond, Jake Olson with the secondary guys. Baker was with the linebackers. That's not the case anymore. Blake Baker is basically the CEO of this defense. And the first individual drill, Chris Kiffin worked with the linebackers. And Blake Baker was with 2 defensive players. He was with P.J. Woodland and Aiden Anding, who were both corners. He was not with D.J. Pickett, not with Jakeem Jackson, not with Havon Finney. He was only with P.J. Woodland and Aiden Anding, and they were working on the quick passing game and reads. And Baker was kind of playing quarterback, and he had those 2 guys going through some short passing game stuff. And he did that for a 5-minute period. And then he left those 2 guys, and they went back with the rest of the corners who Corey Raymond was working with, And Blake Baker went over to the safeties, and the safeties were working on footwork, and they were working on tackling on this big donut-style dummy. And Blake Baker kind of watched. He gave his 2 cents. I saw him put his hand on one player's shoulder and talk him through one thing. And he kind of oversaw a safety drill for 5 minutes. And after that, he took 3 of the safeties, C.J. Jim Coyley, Aiden Hall, and Deshaun Spears, and worked with them exclusively. Now, those 3 are candidates at the star position. They're both big, all 3 big, physical, rangy. They fit the profile of the star. And Blake Baker worked those guys at the star position for a period. Only those 3. The rest of the safeties went with Jake Olson. Those 3 guys worked with Blake Baker for 5 minutes. He worked on alignment, worked with them on their eyes, on some reads, and did that. And then that period broke, and Blake Baker went to the entire secondary at that point, and they were running a shell coverage walkthrough. And Blake Baker ran the entire drill. Corey Raymond was in the back end with the corners. Jake Olson was in the back end with the safeties, and they were helping the guys rotate through. But Blake Baker was running the drill and instructing guys where to go. He was taking the snaps as the quarterback and actually throwing the football and then coaching based on what he did. So over the course of 20 minutes in 4 practice periods, Blake Baker worked 1 period with 2 cornerbacks on short passing game, 1 period with the whole safety group on tackling, 1 period with just the star safeties on alignment, and then a period with the entire secondary. And not once did he go over with where Devon Keys is and where TJ Dottery is, and that's all Chris Kiffin right now. Blake Baker was playing CEO. He was managing individual players who needed attention to detail on this. Maybe it was something they saw on film that they didn't like, or that something that they're going to ask these players to do they haven't done before, that he wants to be sure he's firsthand instructing. I don't know why it is that he took the players he did at the times he did, but it was very noticeable that he's the only guy out there on the defensive side who's moving around. And he did. And Lane Kiffin, we don't have the sound cut up because it was just 25 minutes ago. But Matt Moscona asked Lane Kiffin today, why is Lane moving around? And Lane Kiffin said, well, Chris is going to work with the linebackers, and I want Blake to be able to move around and to coach different positions and to see different things. And he is. So I think that's an interesting wrinkle. I don't think it's program altering. I don't think it's going to be worth 2 wins for LSU. But I do think for the coordinator who's making this music with this entire defensive group to be hands-on with multiple aspects of it, not just his linebackers in the individual periods, I think it's easier for him to get his point across. Because ultimately, this defense has to look the way that Blake Baker wants it to look. Blake Baker has to coach his position coaches on how they need to coach things, and then he's got to make it all come together in concert. And I think his ability to do that hands-on with individual position groups is an interesting thing. So that's the defensive side of this. There are a few other things of note that I got to look at today. On offensive line, there was one small change. The offensive line for the entirety of the first 3 weeks has been Jordan Seaton at left tackle and Devin Harper at left guard, Braylon Moore at center, Aliou Ba at right guard, and Weston Davis at right tackle. That group has been the front 5. And today, Devin Harper came out of that lineup, and Bo Bordelon went in at left guard. Devin Harper bumped back to the second group. That doesn't mean at all that Devin Harper's been demoted or that Bo Bordelon is surging towards the starting spot. It's spring. It's a day, and I think they might have just wanted to get a look at somebody else. So it was noticeable because it was a change that was something that had been in place for 3 weeks. Just something I thought I'd pass along. Incidentally, the second team offensive line is Bryson Martinez at left tackle, Harper today at left guard, then William Satterwhite, the Tennessee transfer, at center. Jaquan Sprinkle at right guard comes in from lower level, and then Darren Spray from Kentucky came in and was the right tackle there. So that's some offensive line talk, and then had the 6 plays that they always run. It's thud. It's not full contact. The offensive linemen and defensive linemen do hit each other in 11-on-11, but it's far from tackle football. They're just trying to get some plays put together. It started with Winnie Watkins catching a crossing pattern over the middle from Landon Clark, who's been with the first team when Levitt's not available. So Watkins made that catch. Then Clark had a design quarterback draw. We've seen a good bit of that quarterback run game. Malik Elzy, the transfer from Illinois, made a sideline catch. They ran a toss play to Caden Durham. Then there was a dive to Caden Durham, and this is a play that I did take note of because they ran a dive and Durham busted it up the middle and was quote-unquote stopped after like 15 yards. And immediately when he was stopped, and it's not tackle, so they didn't take him to the ground, but he was stopped, they blow the whistle, Caden Durham ran to the middle and put the ball down. And if you've watched Ole Miss play in the Kiffin era, you know that tempo is vital. And the best time to go tempo is when you hit a big gainer. And the best way to get to that is when you hit a big gainer, you don't get up and dance. You don't get up and spike the ball or spin it. You don't get up and chest bump your teammates. You put the ball down and let them snap it again. And so you saw Caden Durham run for like quote-unquote 15 yards and then make a point to put the ball down. And it's something I picked up on, and it's something that I expect LSU to do because it's a pillar of the Lane Kiffin offense. And it's just another wrinkle of what LSU is going to be doing this fall that is new look to this offense. And it's something that you got to coach because it's not guys' nature to rip off 15-yard gain and then go spot the ball instead of maybe celebrate that 15-yard gain. LSU, you can expect to celebrate, to put that ball down. The last play was a very athletic play by Deuce Geralds, the freshman defensive tackle. It was a snap to the quarterback. Geralds, let's say you're the quarterback, you're looking at the offensive line. Geralds was on the right side of the offensive line at defensive tackle. He looped around to the left side toward the left tackle on a stunt and got his hand up and knocked the ball away. That's a guy that I know the former staff really, really liked when they signed him out of Georgia. And I think that the defensive staff is basically the same. I think this whole staff is going to like Deuce Geralds. He made a really athletic play to loop around and break that pass up at the line of scrimmage. So that was the last play that we saw of 11 on 11. That's kind of a look at LSU today at practice. Again, just 20 minutes to look at. Last piece of information, Trey'Dez Green, once again, was in a no-contact jersey, as was Malachi Thomas, the Pittsburgh tight end. So two of LSU's tight ends were in no contact, but they were out there practicing, catching footballs, going through the individual drills with the rest of the tight ends. So nothing of significance there other than the fact that they had those jerseys on. So I got a practice report up at louisianasports.net if you want to read that. We'll be back out there on Thursday, then again on Saturday for evaluations. Thursday we do get to film. On Saturday, no cameras are allowed, so maybe a little bit better look on Saturday. We'll see. Lane Kiffin talked to the media back on Thursday of last week and said, hey, we need to kind of work together on how often y'all want to go in and what y'all want to look at. I don't know that there have been any changes made to this point, but that's where we are, and that's what we saw today. If you want to read about it, you can over at louisianasports.net. Of course, my LSU spring football segments are always archived at Hunt on LSU if you're looking for that. Tuesday show is brought to you by Immense Networks Cloud IT Management. When we come back, a couple of additions to Will Wade's basketball staff, what I think it means. We'll talk about it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com. HighlandIG.com is that website. Jonathan Carbo and his team, they're first class to work with from an insurance perspective. I talk to you about property and casualty most often. It's what I think they do more of at the Highland Insurance Group, but that doesn't mean that's all they do at the Highland Insurance Group. If you're a business and you want to make sure that your employees have the best benefits possible at the right price, well, call the Highland Insurance Group. They are happy to give you a second option. There's a carrier out there that continues to raise rates. It just makes it difficult to provide proper health insurance for your employees, to provide the right benefits for your employees. If that's happened to you and renewals are so uncomfortable, or there's one upcoming and you're not sure what it's going to be like, contact the Highland Insurance Group. Let them take a look at it. Maybe they can give you a second option to make sure that your employees are taken care of. We know how important that is to recruiting talent and to keeping and maintaining talent in your organization. The Howard Insurance Group, happy to help you with property and casualty, certainly can help you out with benefits as well. It's the Howard Insurance Group. They're online at HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Tuesday shows are brought to you by Immense Networks Cloud IT Management. If you have one IT employee that is just constantly running around the office, constantly overwhelmed, constantly having to deal with issues in terms of your network, that sounds familiar to a lot of folks. I've certainly worked in a job where that was the case. Let Immense come in and help. That doesn't mean replace your IT employee or employees. That means help. And when people think IT, a lot of times you just think fixing broken computers. Well, this guy's computer's frozen. This guy can't open email. Okay, IT, get in there. That's part of IT, but it's certainly not the entirety of IT. Immense is a consultant, a proactive consultant. One, they can monitor your information technology system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to make sure there aren't big issues that are looming. And two, they can help you use technology to better perform in your industry. That's what Immense can bring. They've been in business for 20 years right here in Baton Rouge, owned and operated by LSU folks. They've certainly got experts in QuickBooks or Salesforce or other CRMs, but you're talking about much more than that. If you're between 50 to 100 employees and you might need to look into another or a better or an additional option in terms of IT, Immense Network Cloud IT Management is happy to help you out with that. Immense.net is the website, immense.net. All right, you recognize a couple of the additions headed to LSU on Will Wade's first staff this time around. His second first staff, I guess I should say. The first name was announced over the weekend. That, of course, was Rick Stansbury. Stansbury, longtime head coach at Mississippi State, the winningest head coach in the history of Mississippi State. He was the head coach there in Starkville from 1998 through 2012 and had some really, really good teams there at Mississippi State. Had two teams that won the SEC tournament in 2002 and 2009. They won the SEC regular season title in 2004, won the West 5 different times. He was the SEC Coach of the Year in 2004, and really had really good teams. That team he had with D. Boston, Renardo Sidney, and I mean that team was really good. And he was there for a long time. I mean, to have a run in an SEC school that spans 14 years is no joke. And so he left there after 2012, was dismissed, and worked for a couple years at Texas A&M as an assistant before he took the Western Kentucky job. And in Western Kentucky, they had some success there. He obviously got a monster recruit that never ended up on campus from New Orleans to sign with Western Kentucky. But you look at his time there, they won 20 games in 4 straight years from 2017 through 2021. And the last 2 years won 19 and 17. They made the NIT a couple times, never made the NCAA tournament, but he did a pretty good job there as well. Stansbury has always been thought of as a very, very good recruiter. He's a relationship-based guy who has just hustled and gotten really good players wherever he's been. And I think that's something that has intrigued Will Wade. Will Wade had his oldest son, Isaac, on staff at McNeese and at NC State. And he hired Rick Stansbury from Memphis, where Rick Stansbury has been an assistant for 3 years under Penny Hardaway, and they have worked the portal really hard at Memphis. They had a top 3 signing class a couple of years ago, had a top 9 signing class this past year. Now, that didn't work out. They didn't have a very good year at Memphis this year, but this is not a guy that's way past his prime, washed up, and he's been in the mix. I mean, Memphis is a good job. It's not necessarily a power conference job at this point, but it's in the mix. They've got big backing, and they've got a famous head coach. So it's not like he was just on easy street there in Memphis. So now Rick Stansbury comes to LSU. He'll be key in terms of the recruiting efforts for LSU and Will Wade. And the name that was announced or reported, I should say, today is one that everyone, of course, is well aware of, and that is Johnny Jones, who spent time here as a player, went to a Final Four, as an assistant coach for 12 years, went to a Final Four, and then as the head coach at LSU for 6 seasons, 5 seasons, I should say, at LSU before he was let go after the 2017 season. But if you remember that Johnny's time here was actually pretty good to start. They went 9-9 in the league the first year, went 9-9 in the league the second year, won 20 games, and made it to the second round of the NIT. Then they made the NCAA tournament that following year with Jarrell Martin and Jordan Mickey. Won 22 games that year. They were 11-7 in league play. They actually went 11-7 in league play the next year as well. And then the final year, it just all kind of fell apart there, and they were 2-16, and he was let go. But they were above 500 in the SEC, or 500 or better in the SEC 4 years in a row. Then Johnny went to Texas Southern, and he did a pretty good job at Texas Southern to begin things. There's his records to start at Texas Southern: 24-14, 16-16, but 12-6 in the league that year. 17-9, 10-3 in the league that year in the COVID year. 19-13, they went 13-5 in the SWAC that year, and then won the SWAC tournament the next year. They made the NCAA tournament 3 times under Johnny at Texas Southern. You obviously got to win the tournament to do that. They did it 3 times in a row, 2021, 22, and 23. And so he'll come back, and Johnny is 65 years old. His most intense coaching is in his rearview mirror. But you got a sense that a guy from DeRidder who loves LSU as much as Johnny does is going to leave a head coaching opportunity to come do this. It's an off-ramp for him, but I think one that he can be passionate about. You get back into big-time college basketball, you're not necessarily in some smaller gyms that are relatively empty like you would be at the head coach at a SWAC school. You're going to be in Rupp Arena next year. You're going to be in Bud Walton Arena next year, and you're going to be facing NBA guys and dueling with Hall of Fame coaches. And I think that's probably reinvigorating for Johnny as his last coaching stop. Johnny certainly knows the people around here in Louisiana that you need to know, and that's a guy that Will Wade will bring in to do that. He spent, obviously, a long time at North Texas, over a decade in the Dallas area, and now close to a decade in the Houston area at Texas Southern. So that's 2 stops in Dallas and Houston, places that LSU does theoretically recruit pretty heavily, and he's going to have some relationships in those 2 places. So Will Wade's going to run this show. He said in his opening press conference, hey, I'm the general manager. I'm going to be the guy that makes the decisions on who we take and how we take them. You know that Will's going to be intimately involved in recruiting for sure. He's very involved in running practices. Like he's hands-on with every aspect of this program. He's young enough that he wants to do that. So you bring in very experienced guys who have been in this league for a very long time, who have relationships in this part of the world, and they're just part of the staff. And I think that these are additions that are positive for LSU. Do I think they're game changers? I think Will Wade's the game changer. He's the guy that changes this game. These are just very respected guys who are going to come in and add some older guys to this staff, because Will's still young. He's still in his very early 40s. So there's still going to be more coaches added for LSU. Look at the timeline. The portal opens today. Will Wade said at the introductory press conference, like, hey, we're going to have a shell recruiting staff in place for that. I believe that Rick Stansbury and Johnny Jones are ready to go from that perspective here at LSU. You've obviously got Heath Schroyer here as well as kind of the direct report there. So they've got 4 guys now in that department with Schroyer, Wade, Jones, and Stansbury who can operate things at this time of the year. It's busy. You've got to go work the portal. You've got to deal with the current players on the roster and fill this thing out. And you know that they're hitting the ground running, doing all that. So that's the shell recruiting staff. I've heard some other names that you may look at as possible additions to this staff. I probably won't go as far as to talk about that now. I'll say that there is a former ACC head coach that could be a potential big name add to this hire, but that's not official at this point, nor has it really been rumored about. So there are more additions coming. Will's not going to have a 20-person staff like some teams in college basketball do. He wanted to get the adults in the room here, get things moving, and he's going to drive this bus. So I think it's a positive that both of these guys are headed to LSU. And they're certainly familiar names, certainly big names, certainly guys that won't be intimidated by the moment here at LSU. They know what they're getting into. And again, it's Will Wade's show, and this is just the support group for that. I'm very, very interested to see how the next week goes with the transfer portal. There are more than 1,400 men's players in the portal at this point. You've got to go get double-digit of those to fill out the roster. At this point, you don't know if anybody from Matt McMahon's final team will continue on with the program. There are some guys that have not announced their intention to enter the portal. Jalen Reese has not done that to this point. So we'll see how that all shakes out. That's the next domino to fall here. But that shell recruiting staff is what we were looking for. You've got it. It's Will Wade, Rick Stansbury, Johnny Jones, and then Heath Schroyer on top of all them. And we'll see how it shakes out. It's an interesting time for LSU basketball, to be sure. All right, we'll take a time out. Let's talk all things LSU, baseball, basketball, spring football with Glen West to go 24/7. We'll do it next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Fabry Chevrolet GMC, Fabry Chevrolet GMC. They are on Highway 61 in St. Francisville, and online at FabryChevrolet.com. Want a new truck? It's still a great time to get on by Fabry Chevrolet GMC. If you're looking for a Chevy Silverado, you've always been a Chevy driver, well, up to $11,000 off MSRP. It's an awesome time to do that. 1.9 APR financing on those Silverados as well. Maybe a Sierra is what you're interested in. Up to $13,000 off MSRP there. 0.0 APR financing. Start that process online at FabryChevrolet.com, but I suggest you stop on by and see them on Highway 61 in St. Francisville. You know that you're in for a wonderful customer experience when you work with the Fabry family. They've been at this for almost 40 years in Baton Rouge. Their reputation is sparkling. It's because they value the community they work for. And that's now been extended over to St. Francisville. So get on by and see them. They're online at FabryChevrolet.com, but see them at Highway 61 in St. Francisville. It's Fabry Chevrolet GMC.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Tuesday shows brought to you by Immense Networks, Cloud IT Management. Find them online at immense.net, immense.net. Glen West with us on Tuesdays, senior writer over at Go 24/7, joins us now on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Glenn, how are you?
I'm doing well, Hunt. How about yourself?
I'm doing just fine. Y'all just chatted with Lane Kiffin about an hour ago. I listened to it. I don't know if anything was earth-shattering to me, but what did you take away from the head coach's comments earlier today?
Yeah, I think probably the only little bit of news of the day is just Sam Levitt had a little procedure done to kind of clean out the rest of his Liz Frank injury, to take out a couple screws there. It was something that he had posted about over the weekend, so we made sure to ask about it today. And it doesn't sound like he's going to be back for the rest of spring, but it's something that Lane Kiffin said the team knew about, they expected, and everything's still on schedule for Sam in terms of his recovery. So that's probably the only little piece of news. I think probably one of the interesting things that he talked a little bit about today that was really kind of unprompted. He said it, throughout a couple of different questions, but we were able to kind of piece it together a little bit. But, it sounds like LSU's defense is a little bit further ahead than the offense at this stage, and I think that's also not to be totally unexpected because there's so much continuity returning from a defensive staff personnel perspective, and then certainly a lot of the players that were on this team that were a big part of the defensive nucleus last year are back as well. So I think LSU held its first scrimmage this past Saturday, and that was one of the bigger takeaways that Kiffin said that he had, I guess, walking out of that practice was just the level of consistency that the defense is playing with at this portion in spring is probably a little bit ahead of where the offense is at this stage.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That was next on my question list, but you checked it off. So interesting. Let's switch over to basketball before we get to baseball to kind of finish things out here. Sounds like Rick Stansberry and Johnny Jones are going to be the first two additions to Will Wade's staff. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of the SEC experience that those two guys have. I mean, Stansberry is a guy that's the all-time winning coach at Mississippi State, so he's obviously very intimately familiar with how to recruit in this conference and how to have success in this conference. And with Coach Jones, I don't know that I didn't know, 2 months ago that we'd see the day where both Will Wade and Johnny Jones were on LSU's staff. But, look, crazier things have happened. But another guy that has recruited Louisiana at a very high level. You talk about a lot of the top in-state talent, staying in Louisiana when he was the head coach at LSU. And, look, I don't think it's any misconception here that Louisiana pumps out more football players than basketball players. But, when there have been some really good basketball players here in recent years in Louisiana, some of them have chosen to go elsewhere, including Chris Senak in this last class. They've got another couple of really talented players in the 2027 class that LSU will probably want to, get their claws into a little bit here. So, Johnny Jones, for whatever you can say about his tenure here, he did recruit Louisiana pretty well. And so, I think those are two guys that obviously are very experienced in this conference and I think should be able to help support Will Wade in whatever manner that he needs them to.
What do you expect in the transfer portal cycle here from LSU That's a broad question, but I asked it that way kind of intentionally.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, I think, right now there are only two players from the 2025-26 roster that have not announced what they're going to do with their future. Jalen Reese, the freshman point guard, and then Robert Miller, the sophomore forward. Those are two guys that I think LSU right now has a decent chance at getting back, but I think that also leaves 13 spots available now going forward. And so I think it's going to be a very, very busy next 3-4 weeks for LSU in terms of roster building and what they want to attack. I think there's probably one guard out there from Georgia, Jeremiah Wilkinson, that has been very heavily floated around as a guy that LSU would have interest in, and so we'll see if something happens there. But look, I think you got to go back to what Will Wade said at his opening press conference. He wants toughness, he wants grit, he wants position versatility, he wants a lot of qualities here that he has found to have success in this conference over the years as part of this roster. And so I think you're going to see a lot of guys in that 6'5" to 6'9" range. I think you'll see some maybe 6'10", 6'11" guys as well to kind of help beef up the front court. But there's going to be a lot of players here that LSU is going to do their due diligence on over the next couple weeks, and I'm excited to see what that nets for them here as they try to be really aggressive here in year one under Will Wade.
Well, let's talk about baseball. Are they turning a corner? Are they doing a high wire act? And what do we think about the fact that they've won 2 weekends in a row with crazy Sundays?
Yeah, look, there is definitely a flawed comparison that you can make for this team right now. There's a lot of inconsistencies going on, but I will say, I think that the fact that they're now starting to show that they can win some of these games where they're not playing their best is, at least an encouraging sign. I mean, offensively, I think this last weekend they struggled against the really good arms, but they also made Tennessee pay for the mistakes that they made on the mound. And then certainly on Sunday, when Tennessee started running out of pitching there late in the game, they made sure to take advantage of that. And that's something that, quite honestly, they weren't doing even earlier in the season. I mean, you and I were talking about this today in front of before we went in for practice, but there were a lot of these non-conference opponents that were able to kind of shut this offense down, even on Sundays and Saturdays and Sundays. And, you wouldn't expect Sacramento State's pitching to, hold LSU to, 4 or 5 runs in a game and have LSU really sweat out a win there. So I think that there are some signs that this offense is starting to come around. I think probably another big takeaway for me this past weekend is, do they decide to make a move at first base? Do they try some other things out with some of the struggles that we've seen out of Zach York? And I think all that's very much on the table here as we go into tonight's game and certainly this weekend when they leave again for another road trip.
Yeah, I mean, what would the options be at first base for you? I know that Cerna got banged up a little bit on Sunday, but
Sure.
Who else is somebody that you would like a look at first?
Yeah, I think Pearson is an interesting option. Could they decide, if they're going up against a lefty pitcher, for example, to put Pearson at first and then go back to Trent Caraway at third? I think that's maybe your most traditional look there. I think Mason Braun, the freshman, is an interesting name if you're going up against a righty pitcher that, maybe give him an opportunity at first base. And, then the other one that I had kind of thought about here over the weekend and wrote about it in our kind of post-series column here is, we'd heard weeks ago that LSU was trying William Patrick out in the infield. I'd be curious to see how involved he's been or how much progress he's made in these last couple of weeks in the infield, and does maybe he not deserve a spot start here at third base to try to maximize or try to switch things up, and could he be somebody that LSU maybe moves at third, looks at third base, and then John Pearson starts at first base. So there's a lot of different ways that they can look at this. I don't know that any of those options are confirmed better than Zach York right now, but certainly the way that York is performing, it doesn't hurt to explore a lot of different options here over the next several games.
What about pitching midweek and on Sundays? They haven't seemed to crack that code just yet with somebody who can go out there and throw 2 clean innings.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you'll see a handful of guys that they continue to roll out there. I mean, they've had to use some of their better bullpen arms just to get through some of these midweek games here in recent weeks. But I think you'll continue to see some of Jaden Newt, Reagan Ricken, Marcos Paz. I think those are guys that make a lot of sense to continue seeing time on the mound here in the midweeks. Santiago Garcia might be another one. A guy that I think really, needs to get more opportunity and show a little bit more consistency is Maverick Rizzi. I know he's a guy that, you're really banking on having some big weekend outings, but, it's a balls and strikes game, and, he's got to get a little bit cleaner around the strike zone here for LSU to really feel comfortable relying on him to go, get you 6-7 key outs in a weekend game. So, I think that they're going to continue to roll out a number of different pitchers here in the short term, but I think that those are just maybe a handful that we could see tonight.
We'll see you at the box tonight, Glenn. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Hunt.
It's Glenn West, senior writer over at Go 24/7, covering LSU football, basketball, baseball. We covered it all here with Glenn. I want to remind you about my friends over at Ochsner, and specifically about their 24/7 symptom checker that can help you guide your way to the right care over there at Oxnard. So you can visit their symptom checker online at oxnard.org/find-care. Maybe you need primary care. That's all your comprehensive and continuous care. Get your checkups, immunizations. You got a headache, back pain, some mild asthma, maybe looking at something like high blood pressure or cholesterol. That's where primary care steps in. Talking about urgent care, that's going to be a median care for common illnesses like lacerations, sprains, maybe urinary pain, earaches, minor burns, sunburns, or maybe heat-related illness. Walk-ins are welcome, and there are extended hours for their urgent care. Now, emergency care, that's when it's severe and it's life-threatening. You're talking about severe chest pain, bleeding, severe asthma, maybe head trauma, loss of consciousness, and that's when you need to go to the ER. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there are virtual care options as well. My Ochsner's virtual visits, you can schedule them online through My Ochsner. They've got convenient follow-ups and routine care. So call them, 1-800-231-5257. That's 1-800-231-5257. A nurse can help direct you where you need to go. That's from our friends over at Ochsner. And one of the things that Glenn talked about there was Kiffin said that the defense is ahead of the offense. He said, quote, we're a defensive team right now. That's kind of music to my ears because I realize they look like a defensive team in last August, and we all said the defense is going to be awesome, the defense is okay, and the offense is just really bad, and it made the defense look better. I don't believe Lane Kiffin's going to put a bad offense out there in the fall. I just don't. Until I see that, I will not believe it. So if the defense is winning reps, that tells me that the defense is doing some things right because I expect that the offense will figure some things out. It's way early, and they've got tons of turnover on offense, and they don't have their starting quarterback on offense now. And there are tons of reasons why the defense should be winning, but I'm okay with the defense winning some scrimmages while Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss are on LSU's offensive staff because I believe those two guys are going to get something figured out, and that just means the defense is doing some good things. So just my 2 cents on that situation. Speaking of my 2 cents, I'll give you my 2 cents on last night's finish to the college basketball season. I had one strong takeaway that had nothing to do with Michigan winning the national championship. I'll give you that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Boudreaux's Electrical Services for all of your Generac home standby generators. Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Neil and Melissa have been running Boudreaux's for 40 years. They are local. They are family owned. And you can buy your Generac home standby generator from the big box stores. That can happen. But what happens after you make the purchase? Do they install it with somebody local? Do they monitor it? Do they come and do the maintenance on it? Or have you just cut them a check and gotten a generator? At Boudreaux's Electrical, you can get the customer service that comes with that professional installation from a local and family-owned company. And if you've bought from the big box store and you're not happy with your customer service, surprise, surprise, you can get the Boudreaux's Boost. Even though you didn't buy the generator from them, you can call them and say, hey, I'd like y'all to take over the maintenance. And they are happy to do it. 985-397-1562 is the number. That's 985-397-1562. Or the Gonzales location, 225-393-89. Find it the easy way, BoudreauxElectrical.com. BoudreauxElectrical.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Tuesday shows brought to you by Immense Networks. Reminder, I will not be at Court to Table tonight for sports trivia, so if you come out and join us on Tuesday, certainly appreciate that over at Court to Table. I'll be on the call for the color for LSU and Bethune-Cookman tonight, so me and Chris Blair with you. 6 o'clock pregame, 6:30 first pitch from the box, but that means can't be at Court to Table. Can't do two things at once, so I'll be at the box, so if you plan on coming out to Court to Table, take a rain check. We'll see you next week there for sports trivia. Remind you about First American Bank and Trust. First American Bank and Trust, FABT.com. Bank local with First American Bank and Trust. They've been here in Southeast Louisiana for 116 years, and they're not going anywhere. So if you think, oh, well, it's a community bank, probably doesn't have the resources I'm looking for my commercial loan. Nope, sure do. They got 25 locations. They've got the resources you need for that commercial loan, and the decisions made about your business, decisions made about your personal loan for your home are made locally at First American Bank and Trust. Not some call center in Atlanta, not calling out to L.A., right here in Southeast Louisiana, 25 locations, whether you're I-12 at St. Tammany or Tangipahoa, down the Bayou, St. John, Lafourche, Terrebonne, maybe just outside Baton Rouge here in Dutchtown or in Jones Creek. First American Bank and Trust, First American Bank and Trust. Watching the game last night, Michigan and UConn, and two things struck me simultaneously. One, Michigan is the worthy champion here. No question about that. And they earned that last night. And they earned it with a game that probably wasn't as close as the 6-point spread indicated. But on the other side of that, I thought Dan Hurley did an amazing job. They slowed the pace of that game down to as slow as it can be played. They limited their turnovers to 11, and Michigan only got 4 points off of them. Essentially, they said, we have to give Michigan as few opportunities as we can have. So we're going to make them guard. We're going to run the shot clock down. We're going to take shots from around the rim near the end of the shot clock, and we'll see if we can shrink the possessions down to keep it close enough to make a couple shots late. And they couldn't. They couldn't keep it close enough to do that. But you look at the statistics, and like, Michigan scored 69 points, first of all. That's way below what they had been doing the entirety of this tournament. You held Michigan to 38% shooting. You had one of those nights where Michigan didn't shoot it great from three, only 2 out of 15. You could tell that Lindeborg was not healthy, could not really push off, could not really explode. And UConn made it a game. I told you yesterday Caravan needed to shoot it better. 3 of 10. Not awesome. It needed to be better than that. 5 of 14 from the floor. And UConn didn't shoot it great, just period. They shot 31% from the game, but I thought that was more an indication of Michigan's size giving them a lot of trouble around the rim. I thought UConn tried to shoot high percentage shots, but Michigan turns them into low percentage shots because of their defense. And so at the same time, while I can suggest that I thought that Dan Hurley's plan and his players' execution of that plan, which you would expect from a team that's reached the final now 3 out of 4 years and has won 2 national championships, like, they're going to be able to carry out the plan. Plan was great. They carried out the plan, and all that said, Michigan kind of held them off to the side. Like, there was never a point in the second half where you looked at that and went, oh, I think UConn's coming. Michigan just didn't let them. Even on a night where the other team carried out their plan and Michigan didn't shoot it great, they still won the game. And that's how you become a 37-3 team. That's how you win a national championship as a 1 seed. I thought it was masterful work, really, by both coaches. I thought it was masterful work by Hurley to put together that roster without the surefire top 10 pick that was good enough to run through absolute dogs in this event. I mean, you're talking about a UConn team that got to this point by beating UCLA, Michigan State, Duke, and Illinois. That's no fluke. That's a team that was playing great at the end of the season. And then to Michigan for rebuilding that roster completely out of the portal. Not a single player on the roster that enrolled at Michigan as a freshman in the starting lineup. Like, it was a complete portal trash class, and it was done brilliantly by Dusty May, who's obviously pretty good at this thing. If you can get Florida Atlantic to that spot and get Michigan to that spot, it's pretty damn good. So not a great game last night, not a classic game last night, but I thought one that showcased the strength of both programs and provided a worthy champion. That was my take on it, Jordan.
Yeah, you was right. Michigan was the better team. You called it that, Michigan was the team that you had winning it all. It just, what really showed me was, Dan Hurley's a great coach, but UConn truly miss having like a real scoring threat at guard. Like Mullins could not buy, the whole team couldn't buy a shot, but Mullins, like they needed like a Jordan. I know Jordan Hawkins is what he is on the Pelicans, but they needed that Jordan Hawkins. They needed that Cam Spencer, Castle when they won the national championship. They needed one of those guys that can go get their own shot, because when the going got tough and they kept trying to go inside with Reed and just, it felt like there was a lid on the glass no matter who threw up a shot for UConn. Caravan couldn't hit a nothing. But, it's
hard to score around Merritt down there. 7-3, swatting things out of there.
He's going to be a lottery pick.
Yeah.
Like, he played himself into a lottery pick.
Big dude.
He played himself.
It was just, it was good. It turns out, and I talked about this when I filled out my bracket, I didn't do a great job with the bracket. Like, I think I got 2 of the Elite 8. I got 1 Final Four. It was not good, but I got the champion, and that got me second place in the pool.
Exactly.
I won. It was a short entry fee. I think I won $100. Like, I've never won anything before. You just got to pick the champion. That's the key.
That's what I'm saying,
I didn't
bro.
have squat in the Elite 8, Final Four. Just got to pick the team that wins it all.
Literally, yesterday when you was like, my bracket wasn't that good, I'm like, well, you got the champion. You still got a chance to actually finish it out and be all right.
I didn't even know. I got the Venmo notification when I was sleeping last night, so we'll take it.
See, that's a plus, because sometimes you got to go hunt the guy down to get your money. So, when it gets sent to you,
I wouldn't have known. I'd have had to gone back and I just assumed if I have 2 Elite 8 teams and 1 Final Four team, that's not going to win the pool. But if you get the 300 points at the end for winning it, I guess that's where the money is.
Hey, money.
We'll take it. Now I'm going to put it all back into a Masters pool. So it doesn't even come into the account. It's just going right back into the Masters pool. But there's real money to be won in the Masters pool. We'll see. Our Tuesday show is brought to you by Immense Networks Cloud IT Management. Got a lot to do in hour number 2. If you missed any of hour number 1, catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Opened with an LSU football practice report. Talked a little LSU basketball with the new coaching staff that's coming in. We chatted with Glen West as well. So a lot of LSU talk in hour number 1. We'll continue that after Sports Center. We'll do a baseball preview of tonight. Interesting game tonight with Bethune-Cookman. I have some thoughts on that. Basketball transfer portal, Saints talk with Sharif Isaac. So still plenty to do. Don't go anywhere. We'll pause for Sports Center. Back for hour number 2 next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Marucci. It's officially basketball season, I guess now. Not basketball season. Officially baseball season now. Basketball season over, unless you're locked in on the NBA, which around here, not a ton of that. But baseball, it's up and running, and Marucci is happy to have you there. You can go check out their incredible facilities, and they've got, obviously, a ton of equipment, which you can purchase and use what the big leaguers wear, use what the LSU guys wear. But you can also take a tour and see where the official bat of Major League Baseball is made, where 1,200 bats are made daily on site. You can see where they're carved. You can see where they're stained and finished. And you can grab one. You can take some BP in the hitter's house. Go to maruccisports.com/campus-tour and book a tour. Go see it. And every single ticket up for the tour comes with a 20% discount in the campus tour school and the hitter's house. It's all there at Marucci. Check them out at maruccisports.com.